Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another very interesting figure. So lately there has been a string of figures that have come out that look pretty much like bootlegs of Mattel figures, but kind of aren't. They're mostly just sort of like heavily based on Mattel figures, and that's, I guess, where the creators of the figure get their ideas from. However, this one is definitely the sketchiest of all as far as I'm concerned with being a bootleg. It looks like a straight up bootleg. But as you can see, we've got the Giganotosaurus, and it's absolutely insane to me to think that somebody would bootleg this version of the Mattel Giganotosaurus. I mean, honestly, if they were going to take a Mattel Giga and bootleg it, they should have gone with the Super Colossal and then just shrunk it down, because it doesn't have the goofy action feature that this one has. But this one is one of those situations where I saw it and I thought, okay, I'm kind of intrigued, just because it's, you know, these same type of like bootlegish figures, and I've been having fun with these since the Indominus Rex. But at the same time, like, I really am not a very big fan of this Giganotosaurus, but at the same time, I was also kind of curious to see how exactly the action feature and everything would work on this one compared to the Mattel version, and I thought it would be pretty funny to kind of, just in general, review this to see how different it is and, you know, overall what the figure's like. But you can see it looks pretty much to me like the Mattel Giganotosaurus, if I can recall correctly. But you can see this time we actually have the box. It does state Giganotosaurus, light and sound action Giganotosaurus, and then it actually has Dinosaurs Island Toys, I believe is exactly who created the T-Rex when I had taken a look at that one. You can see apparently how we install the tail and everything. Intrigued to see the light up feature of this one as well, because that's something that, again, is not what you would find on the Mattel version. But here on the back you do have some images and some, I guess, interesting information. I actually did not read any of this, and I probably am not going to. So if you guys want to read it, there's your chance. I don't know how incredibly inaccurate that information is, but I can't imagine it being too accurate. Oh, what do we have down here on the underside? Oh, I see. So we actually have an entire checklist of what they have out. So we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the turning head T-Rex, which we have reviewed. We have the Indominus Rex, which they actually state on the box, Indominus Rex. That's so crazy to me, because obviously that is copyrighted by Universal. So it's incredible to me that they would actually go ahead and put that on the box itself. But you can see we also have the Giganotosaurus, which we are about to take a look at here. And then there are mist spraying T-Rex figures. I have seen these guys on Amazon. I have not ordered them, but I have been very tempted to. So if you guys would like to see reviews of the mist spraying T-Rex, let me know. Maybe I'll go ahead and grab that one off of there as well. But let's go ahead, pop this out of the box, and we'll check it out. So here is our version of the Giganotosaurus here. And you can see, again, it's pretty much as I expected it to be. Not really a great looking figure, but still kind of fun. However, again, it looks almost identical to the Mattel version. A lot of the time with these figures, once you pull them out of the package, you can look at them and be like, okay, well, it looks similar, but I can also notice instant differences and stuff between the two, whereas this one looks a lot closer to just being a straight up bootleg. Now, I do actually have the Mattel Giga over here to the side, so if we bring that one in here and we just kind of set it in here, obviously it's going to be hard to get them both in the same spot where their heads sit the same way, because the action feature is annoying. That's one thing I actually can say about this one. The bootleg actually allows the Giga to kind of sit in a more natural spot where it's kind of, you know, not leaning to the side like this one. It's hard to get it to actually stay up in a good spot. There, we kind of have it there, but it's probably going to fall. But you can see straight away, or at least I think you can, maybe not. It's hard to tell from this angle, but we will elaborate a little bit more here in just a bit. But the size of the bootleg is definitely a little bit smaller than the Mattel version. So let's go ahead and bring the camera up just a hair so we can compare the head sculpts. And now it's going to roar. Okay, you get that out of your system. There you go. So if we bring up the two different Giganotosaurus head sculpts and look at the two, it is definitely a bootleg. You could see that the head sculpts, honestly, in my opinion, look pretty much identical for the most part, except the details a little more washed out. It actually looks like maybe they've altered the lower jaw, because you can see some scars on the lower jaw of the Mattel version that are not present on this version, and the scale detail looks a little different, so they've obviously altered the lower jaw. But when you look at the upper part of the head, I feel like it looks almost exactly the same. Like, you're seeing all of the same type of detail. Even the actual injuries right here in the palate, you can see we have injuries in the palate here. I don't know if they're shaped exactly the same way, but the overall detailing looks pretty darn close. I do notice one thing that's a little different, but even if you look at the ridges moving up and over the top of the head, you can see they look identical here on the bootleg version. So definitely almost identical as far as that goes. Even the paint apps you can see are identical here, or for the most part very close, like the way it kind of leads down. You see the same thing here, kind of breaks up and leads down. Same thing here. You also have a little splotch of it right there. You have the same thing there. The coloration doesn't quite go into the eye the exact same way, but it's very, very close. So very clearly they tried their hardest to replicate the Mattel version as closely as possible, which is not really the best decision, but it is what it is, I guess. But you can see they even have the interlocking teeth. Obviously, they look a lot better on the Mattel version. The only area that looks slightly different to me is the eye area, and I feel like maybe the head is a little more compact, kind of squished in compared to the Mattel version. The Mattel head looks a little bit longer to me, but that's just some slightly different areas. One thing that is different that I was just stating is you have these ridges moving up and over the top of the head of the Mattel Giga, whereas the ridges here are a lot more obvious, like they're extended out of the head a lot more than you see for the Mattel version. So even though it's definitely a bootleg, I can tell you that already just from the head sculpt, it does have some differences to it. Obviously, they've altered the figure as they created it, and they didn't want it, I guess, to look exactly the same, but very, very close. As you move down, like you could see the ridges moving along the back of the neck definitely look a little different on the bootleg compared to the Mattel version, but the detail, I would say, of the neck, yeah, looks actually almost identical as well. And again, the same paint apps, like they really did a good job, in a bad way, but a good job of trying to capture the design from Mattel in exactly the same way almost. Like it's nearly identical as far as the way the patterning looks moving down through the bootleg compared to the Mattel version, which is actually crazy to me. As you move down into the arms are a little different, actually. You can see, if I can keep this one from moving, you can see the arms have that same kind of musculature, but the elbow is a little pointier on the bootleg compared to the Mattel version, and the wrist is also positioned differently. This one has much more correct looking wrists, whereas this one has more of a pronated kind of a wrist. No nail paint, of course, because they really wanted to capture all of the aspects of the Mattel version. But as we move down into the body of the dinosaur, you can see we do have the same look where it kind of leads down and the scoots sort of pick up abruptly because of the awkward shape of the dinosaur. If we put it right there, now it kind of matches up. And again, the same thing would probably happen. Yeah, so once you turn it, then they match up. But you can see the large scoots exactly the same there. Again, it seems as though the ridges moving along the back, though, are something that maybe they worked on themselves or altered themselves, because you can see they start out differently as you lead up from the articulated joint in the midsection. The way they just kind of lead up into each other is a little different, and you can see more of a waviness to the ridges on the bootleg compared to the original. But moving down into the body, I feel like the body, to me, looks to be the same as far as the sculpting and detailing goes, just a lot more muted on the bootleg. As you move back into the legs, you can see the legs are definitely different. They're not the same sculpt by any means. We can see the texturing is completely different from the Mattel version to the bootleg version. We have just like more of a skin textured with lots of creases look for the bootleg and osteoderms and stuff, whereas the Mattel version has all sorts of really nice impressive scale, detail, and injuries and scars and stuff throughout. The angle of the leg is also a little bit different. You can see the bootleg is a little more crouched compared to the Mattel version. The Mattel version does have the leg kind of leading back, again, in the same sort of way where the leg is, leading on the other side, trailing on this side, and they captured that same look, but the leg sculpt in general is really quite different. You can see the foot sculpt as well is different, and for once, Mattel somehow wins when it comes to the proportions. Even though the Mattel version definitely has bigger feet than it should, the bootleg has really long feet. Same style as far as like the scoots down the toes and everything. Very different texturing for the scales down there in the feet, but the bootleg definitely has much longer, much more awkward looking feet. The nails are painted similarly, but the Mattel version is more of like a brown with a gloss coat, whereas this bootleg has a black with a gloss coat. The dew claws you could see also stick out of the back of the leg there on the Mattel version, whereas they're kind of in a more natural spot, I would say, for the bootleg version. But as we move out into the tail, let's go ahead and just kind of readjust these guys. You can see that one area where the bootleg didn't capture the coloration exactly as the Mattel version has is out here on the tail, because there's one more little splotch of that color out there on the original, whereas there is not on the bootleg version. You can also see there are actually more joints of articulation leading out into the tail on the bootleg compared to Mattel. Mattel only has 2 joints of articulation leading out. This one has 3. But also kind of funny is the fact that the joint articulation is super obvious as far as the seams go on the Mattel version. The bootleg actually fixed that and made it look better as far as that goes, kind of hiding the seams a little bit nicer, which is really quite humorous to me. But overall, they, again, are very obviously the same sculpt for the most part, with some sort of alterations done to the bootleg. And then again, I was stating how they are definitely a little bit different as far as a size goes. So if we kind of put them up above, you can see that the Mattel version just has more beefiness to it and more length and everything. You can see if we move the tail out, my arm's kind of getting in the way. But there you can see that the Mattel version definitely is a bit more sizable compared to the bootleg version. Maybe if we actually kind of put them face to face here, that should help to give you kind of a little bit more of an idea of the fact that, again, the Mattel version is definitely a little bit bigger than our bootleg version is. Another downside, of course, which is definitely, let's get the Mattel Giga over here, which is pretty common for these knockoff versions, is the fact that we have screw holes on the other side. And they are very ugly screw holes, unfortunately, which is definitely some... Wow, this one is absolutely littered with them. Something that has plagued these figures the entire time, definitely giving them a much cheaper look compared to the Mattel versions. But another thing, again, about the figure, like I said, the detailing is definitely much more muted on this compared to the actual Mattel release. When you get nice and close, you can really see, again, just how muted the detail is. Like, it's completely washed out when it comes to the skin texture in most areas. It looks okay here, but then you lead up here, you can see, again, definitely a very washed out look, especially leading up here into the spines there on the back. And then again, the detail on the leg looks all right, but I feel like maybe that's from the T-Rex, the leg sculpt or something, because it's very different compared to the actual Giganotosaurus leg sculpt that we have on the Mattel version. But pretty much the same figure, just a bit smaller and not nearly as nice when it comes to the detail. As far as the actual action features and everything go, we do have a button on the back of the tail right here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and press that button. And you can hear the noises. So the action feature is pretty much just the same as Mattel's, but maybe not quite as effective as far as the way it works. It's also just generally kind of awkward and still ugly. Compared to the Mattel version. Interesting noises, though, for the figure. Also, I did forget to show you guys the inside of the mouth. We do have a rubber tongue, like we've had for all of these. The Indominus and T-Rex also had that kind of goofy rubber tongue. This Giganotosaurus also has it, which is, again, pretty funny. There's also actually... Oh, I just pushed it by accident. A button here on the underside of the dinosaur, which allows some sounds. I don't know what that sound is from. Randomly, our Giganotosaurus is howling, but that's interesting for sure. As far as articulation goes, you do, of course, have the upper and lower jaws that articulate, again, part of the action feature. You have the arms that go forward and back. You also have the leg articulation, which is unbelievably limited. Like, that's really it. That's all you get when it comes to the leg articulation. On this side, you have the ability to swivel the tail, and then you've got a few joints of articulation moving out there into the tail, which does create kind of a nice ability to articulate the tail. I'm intrigued to see... Oh yeah, super limited over here on this side as well. And then, of course, you have the ability to articulate the midsection with the horrendous action feature that we have. As far as a size goes... For this version of the Giganotosaurus, lengthwise, you are looking at about 18.5 inches or 47 centimeters. And then for a height, I don't know if we can get it into a spot. Yeah, there we go. It'll stay up. Height-wise, you're looking at about 7.5 inches or right around 19 centimeters roughly. There was supposed to be a light-up feature to this one, I believe it stated on the box, and I didn't notice it. So I'm going to dim the lights. We'll try it again just to see if we notice that light-up feature. So let's go ahead and give it a go here. Okay, well, it doesn't work with that button. Let's try it with this one. Oh, I think I spotted it. So randomly, oh yeah, I can see it back here. I assumed it was going to be either up here somewhere or coming out of the mouth, but it didn't happen when I pushed the button. So I think I see the light back here. It actually looks like maybe it's still going for some reason. Yes, it is. Look, there you can see it. Oh, and then it disappeared as soon as I said that. I think I'm actually going to turn the lights off entirely and see if we can spot it a little bit better. So let's go ahead and press the button. Oh, there we go. Now we can really see that light. It has that sort of epic attack thing going on where the light continues to kind of light up and stuff and fade in and out as you are already done with the button and everything. Like, it just keeps going. You can see it's only in the back of the dinosaur. I don't know why the rear of the dinosaur is all of a sudden like on fire and melting back here with this light, but it's definitely an interesting one, that's for sure. The only other thing I really wanted to do was basically bring in the T-Rex from the same brand next to the Giganotosaurus, just to give you an idea of the size. The T-Rex does have a little bit of a longer tail, though, so it has a little bit more length to it, but they overall are very similar in size. I don't know that we really need any other comparisons. Maybe I'll bring in a Mattel T-Rex just to kind of give you an idea of the size. So there is the Mattel Extreme Damage T-Rex next to our Giganotosaurus here, and you can see that the Giga here is basically like the Extreme Damage size version of the Giganotosaurus because it fits very nicely in the same size range as this Mattel T-Rex. So that's probably the best comparison I could give you guys, I think, is just comparing it with the Extreme Chomp and Extreme Damage. You know, that size range T-Rex is pretty much where you'll find this Giganotosaurus sitting at. So this Dinosaurs, Islands, Toys, Jurassic World style Giganotosaurus is definitely not a great figure, and in fact I would say it's probably the least enjoyable out of all of these knockoff figures that I've seen so far, mostly because it is just so obviously a bootleg. A lot of the other figures, I feel like, I don't know if they were necessarily straight up bootlegs, I would call them more so like knockoffs because they were very clearly trying to portray themselves as the Mattel dinosaurs, trying to sell themselves as being the Mattel dinosaurs themselves without actually being them, because when you see them in person, then the detail's quite different and everything, and the paint's a little different, so it looks a little bit different compared to the Mattel version, while almost disguising itself as a Mattel figure, whereas this one is very obviously a bootleg. Like, it's not any sort of figure where you can look at it and question that. When you compare it with the Giganotosaurus from Mattel, you'll very clearly see that the same detail is found on both figures, the same appearance is found on both figures. Obviously, some areas on this one are a little different, like the arms and legs, and of course, like the ridges moving along the back. It's very clearly been retooled a little bit, but it is also not retooled enough where they've hidden the fact that it is a bootleg. So this one definitely is a bit of a fail for them. The others, again, have like that fun feel to them because they are a little bit different and aren't straight up bootlegs, whereas this one is, again, a lot more obvious as far as being a bootleg. It does have some sounds which aren't really that great, and you can't hear them that well. They're kind of muted. It also has the same Mattel action feature as their Giganotosaurus, which is not really so great. It's a horrible action feature in the first place. Doesn't really seem to be any better with this version. I wish they would have just made this Giganotosaurus look like the way it does, honestly, but without the action feature, I feel like it would have been a lot cooler overall. And then you also have some okay paintwork through the course of the figure. You have the light up feature, which is interesting. And you also have articulation, but the articulation is incredibly limited in the legs, like horrible, honestly. The articulation in the arms is okay, and the tail, it's alright, but the action feature, again, takes control of the articulation in the jaw and, of course, the midsection, so there's not much as far as posability there. But overall, it's not really that enjoyable of a figure, and I would say is, without a doubt, the least enjoyable out of all of these figures that I've reviewed so far. So if you are interested in one, I can link you guys in the description to AliExpress where you can purchase one on there. But again, if you already have the original Mattel Giga, not really much of a point in grabbing this one. But if you want it, check the description, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.